Greetings and welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. I am back with a guest that I interviewed for the last program. This is Allan LaVigne. Just to give you a quick intro again, Allan worked with the APRO UFO organization for 6 years, from 1974 to 1980, during a period of probably APRO's greatest activity, and he was there in the thick of it for so much. He talked quite a lot about his APRO experience in our previous program. If you haven't seen that, I strongly recommend that you do so. In addition to his work in the UFO field that ended formally a long time ago, he's maintained an interest ever since. But Allan also has many decades of experience in security, law enforcement, emergency services. He is an expert in such areas as physical security, life safety, criminal investigation, counterterrorism, counter surveillance detection. He has assisted the FBI numerous times over his career. He has worked with Department of Homeland Security. He has done a lot. He's had an amazing career. And we got to talking over his interest in the UFO subject. He does not have a website where he deals with any of this stuff. He's not out to make money. He doesn't do social media. He's just here to talk about what he knows. And what we are going to talk about on this episode or this program are his two absolutely extraordinary UFO encounters, which really sparked his interest in the subject. Allan, thank you for returning. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. So yeah, our last conversation was 2 hours. It was detailed. You got into a lot of stuff dealing with APRO, the investigations, your conversation with Jesse Marcel, with Travis Walton, with Charles Moody, and Edward Herman, and James and Coral Lorenzen. It was just fascinating. I loved it. And you had a lot of other things to say along the way. I thought it was all quite informative. But you got into this subject because of your own personal experience, your own personal encounter. And you had said to me that you talked about the first one to a few friends over the years, but I think you had said you hadn't told anyone about the second one until you told me.
Yeah.
And frankly, your second one is just off the charts, in my opinion. But I think it would be really, I want to thank you for being willing to talk about it.
It's about time.
Okay.
I would say.
So let's go into it.
Yeah.
You were a young guy in the 70s, and what happened?
A lot of people, when I hear people interviewed about UFO, eyewitnesses, one of the first things they ask, oh, well, did you have an interest in UFOs? And, did you watch a lot of sci-fi movies or whatever? I don't want to intimate what they might be hinting at with these things, but they look for, this guy was looking at, I had a very average, I would think, interest in UFOs as anybody would. Really, I never expected to see one, never went out looking for one. Did it come up in conversation with friends? No more so than anybody else. As you know, I do also do art, and interested in aerospace, and have done art commercially with film, and I have some museum exhibits and stuff and everything. But none of it at that time, I never expected to see a UFO. It wasn't even in the cards. If I saw one, I'd go like, "Oh, cool," but I didn't expect it. So I remember this very distinctly. This was with my first wife. We weren't married yet, fiance at the time. It was in the summer. I believe it was in July. I've tried to pin down the exact date because I know this was at sunset. And in those days,
the year was 74?
74, yeah. Summer of 74.
Okay.
I was extremely punctual.
And where did you live? Where were
Tucson,
you?
Arizona.
Tucson,
okay. Arizona. I lived in a townhouse at Alvernon in Bellevue, which is, at the time, that was pretty much the geographic center of the city. To the north was Catalina Mountain Range. To the that would be the east was Rincon's, and the west, I forget the name of that mountain range, but Tucson's in a valley. And the Catalinas were north of us, and they're very prominent. And as I shared in the first video, in those days, you could see the mountains clearly. They were an attraction to the area, and even at night, they were as clear as a bell. See them very well. So this was at sunset. At that time, it was around 7:30ish. There, I was on my way to pick up my fiance at her mother's place, and I was leaving the townhouse parking lot, traveling down the driveway north. Catalina Mountains were in front of me. I was driving a Oldsmobile Delta 88. It's like a aircraft carrier. The thing was huge. A big 455 engine in it, and
those cars of the 70s that were huge.
You can't imagine. You could lie down and not touch either door with your arms stretched out. it was just enormous. So it's not like a little car today where you can't see out the windows or anything. Huge thing. So as I said, the sun's setting, and I get out to Bellevue, traveling north in the driveway, and I see the Catalina mountain range in front of me, and above it, the first star. I see, oh, Polaris. Wow, look how bright that is. And I think to myself, that's why mariners, use the stars to navigate. Look how bright that is. I've never seen it so bright. Wow. Silly me. I guess if you were on the ocean, you would see sights like that all the time. So I pull out, I'm traveling, I make a left-hand turn slowly. It's a residential area. I think the maximum speed was like 25 miles an hour for that street on Bellevue. And I was headed towards Country Club Boulevard to the west. So I still see this light above the Catalinas out my passenger side window to the north as I'm traveling west. And suddenly I see it start, oh, it's moving. I go, oh, silly me. It's not, a star at all. That must be the police helicopter. And they must have the spotlight on. And so I go like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And, it must be something going on in this area, because that was a common occurrence area. We had one police helicopter in Tucson, and everyone would get all excited when they'd see it, and the spotlight would turn on and everything. So I thought, oh, I wonder what's going on. And I go like, oh, it's coming this way. Oh, it must be something up here ahead. Country Club was a main drag at that time. And I go, there must be something up here at Country Club. So as it gets closer and closer, then I realize this is not a police helicopter.
Okay. What clued you into that?
Well, as it got closer, and I can share what I believe the physics were about it, why it looked differently as it got closer. As it got closer, I could see it was a distinct, I would describe, the best way I could describe it is like if you took a round magnifying glass and you put it up in the sky, and around the exterior, around the circumference of that magnifying glass, there was a glowing small corona, bluish white in color, traveling counterclockwise around. It was small, it wasn't pronounced, but you could definitely see it. Looking through the center of it, there was a misty whitish glow, almost like a fog, but directly through it, because it was getting dark, rapidly getting dark, you could see the stars behind it, but they were magnified. And as it moved, the stars streaked, and that came right across over. It
was creating like an optical effect around it,
no,
sort of like distorting the field of vision.
If you look through it, through the center of it, it created, just like if you took a magnifying glass and put it up on the stars, and when it was stopped, the stars looked normal, larger but normal. But when it moved, the stars streaked, like they had a tracking. It's like they were catching up.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's creating some kind of warping of the visual field somehow.
Yeah, it was like it was losing time, you might say. It was like it was catching up to itself.
Interesting.
Today, there's stealth technology where it's photographing what's in front of it, or what's behind it, and showing it in front of it,
like invisibility technology, essentially.
Yeah, and that has a time delay. It can, if it's not AI supported, it can move, and you say, oh, it's like a fraction of a second off. And in this case, that's what it looked like. So now it was large. It swept over Bellevue to the south, and then came back and settled in. It was at about 35 degree angle. It was 2/3 the size of the full moon. And I had slowed to a crawl. And I go, oh,
That's quite large.
yeah, it was very large.
Quite
It was
large.
very large. It was very close. As I'll share later, it was
Mhm.
close enough I could have hit it with something if I threw something at it. It was that close. It and it was very pronounced. It was no just like, oh, I'm not sure what that is. It
So
was
when you saw it, what shape was it? What color was it? What did it look like? I mean,
It
it was
looked-
getting dark at the time, right? So
yeah, it was getting rapidly
Quite
getting dark. Yeah,
Yeah.
by this time it was almost, night.
remember we're talking about stars, so
Yeah. When the sun sets in Arizona, it's quick. You only see that sunset for a minute or so, and then
yeah.
you see a beautiful, night sky and very bright stars, and that's what I was looking at. But through this magnifying glass looking thing
Effect.
up above at 35, degrees, 2/3 the size of the full moon.
So what did it look like?
It looked like if you took a magnifying glass, round magnifying glass, like Sherlock Holmes would use, and you held that up in the sky, that's what it looked like, with a corona that rotated counterclockwise, small corona, bluish
But it was
white.
like a disc, like a flying saucer type of a shape.
Yeah, if you but it was flat. It was like the bottom was towards me.
I see. Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
draw something and send it to you. It's easier. I can make a model of it easier than I can describe it. But
Well, I'll drop it in here. I'll drop it into the video
okay,
if we can do that.
yeah, I'll
That would be
glad to.
awesome.
So it stops. I stop. I go, oh my God, no one's going to believe this. I go, somebody else has got to see this.
Mhm.
So I look at my rear view mirror to see if anyone's coming down, and I can see almost to Alvernon, which was the street to the east of me, the main drag there. Nobody's coming. There's nobody coming down the street. There's nobody outside their houses there. It's residential. There's nobody going the opposite direction. I can see cars on Country Club Boulevard going back and forth, but no one's stopping. No one's looking up. And I see this thing. So I stopped the car completely. I put it into park, still running, but it's in park.
Mhm.
And I'm just sitting there looking up at it through my windshield. And I go, you better look at this. So I foolishly, because if anyone was asking me, what do you do in a case like this? The last thing I would say is get out of your car and get closer to it.
This is what you did.
Yeah, this is what I did.
You were like what, 19,
19,
20?
yeah, 19,
19 years old.
18, 19, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, cool.
Right.
Get out of the car. And I'm not even standing behind the door. I'm in front of the door, I'm looking up at this thing. I go like, wow, this is cool. And I see this corona going around it. And then it dawns on me, I was elated, but then it dawns on me, I could be irradiated. I could be standing under some type of radiation because, again, Cold War, everyone knew about radiation, and
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What am I doing? What am I thinking? And I started getting really, I hate to say it because I'm a guy. I was getting scared. I go like, oh my God, what did I just do? Because you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't feel radiation. I could have just been X-rayed up the yin yang.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, in my head, clear as bell, it's just as if someone was standing there talking to me. A voice said, "You're in no danger. We mean you no harm." It was just as clear as if it kind of jolted me because it's like I'm by myself and suddenly I hear this voice. And it was just like you'd hear anything, like I'm talking to you now. It was just as clear, perfect English, no accent, no nothing. But you're in no danger. We mean you no harm. And then it was just like someone shot me up with heroin. It was so immediate and so strong a feeling of euphoria and elation. It felt artificial at the time. It felt like I'm not saying I felt like I was drugged, like someone slipped me a Mickey, but it was just so artificial and so strong. You're like, oh my God, I feel great. And I wasn't frightened at all. I just go like, wow, this is so cool. And I'm standing there watching it, and this feeling is really just strong in me, and I'm not afraid at all anymore.
Right.
And then it just streaks off to the west, just as if a lot of viewers might not realize, but in the old days when we had the old vacuum tube television sets, you'd turn them off, it would go down to a point real quick, the picture.
Yes.
That's just what it looked like, and it was gone.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I go like, what the? And I go like, I hope my girlfriend is outside. I hope she saw this, because she used to wait for me outside in the driveway.
Yeah.
And I go like, oh, she's closer to the mountains than I am. Maybe she saw it come down. So I get over there, and I said, oh, I saw this thing, and she's listening intently, very. And I go, did you see it? Did you see it? No, she didn't see anything. And I go like, oh, God. And we went out, had a great time, and enjoyed the evening and stuff.
That was that. And
that was it. I didn't think anything more about it till the next day. I went over to a friend's house, and his brother was there. My friend wasn't there, and his brother's. I told him, I said, "Oh, I saw this cool thing last night. This thing. It looked like a magnifying glass, and all this." And he says, "Wow, you should call APRO." And I go, oh yeah, I've heard of them, and we did. Everybody in Tucson knew APRO. Yeah. So we pull out a telephone book. There was no cell phones or internet. We pull out a telephone book, look it up.
Right.
So I call APRO, and Jim answers the phone, and he goes, "Hi, APRO, blah blah blah."
And that's how you got started up with.
That's how
APRO.
That's when I first spoke to him and shared everything. He asked me a couple of questions.
Well, I want to back up to your sighting. So again.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, you describe something that happens a lot with very close encounters, which is A, you're hearing a message, and B, they are somehow affecting you, and they are affecting your emotions, if nothing else. I mean, this is just something that one hears very, very frequently. So when you heard the statement, was it, don't be worried, don't be afraid,
don't be afraid, we mean you no harm.
It was actually in words, like in English, or was it a
it's just as like you're talking to me right now. It wasn't like it was like I said, it startled me, because I thought, you want to look somebody around here, because it was that distinct. It wasn't like a dialogue in myself. It was just like words. It was just like you're talking to me now.
From time to time, I've spoken with a couple of people who've said that they've had telepathic messages, and it's not always clear to me that they are getting it in exact words, like they're getting it as a sense of something, but that it's like words, but I don't know if it's the same thing as words. But you're saying you actually heard it was
these were distinct words. Now, everybody's experienced this before, and you're married, you're very close to your wife, you have almost a telepathic link, you're like, oh, I knew you were going to say that, that kind of like connection. I've certainly experienced that with people that I've been close to, particularly with children. You know what they're going to say before they say it, but it was nothing like that. This was just like communication. This was just like you talking to me.
Could you tell if it was a human sounding voice? It didn't sound like a robot. Could it sound male or female? Could you tell that?
I would say it was masculine. It wasn't like Key-Man, but it was just a normal. It sounded very human to me. No accent, no mispronunciation, but it was a short, word. And
yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
and then they just made you feel good.
Oh, I very few times in your life, like when my daughter was born, and or somebody surprises you with something really nice, or how good you feel, just something suddenly, like you see an old friend and you haven't seen in a long time. You're like, oh, so and so, you just swell up. You feel that's how it felt. And like I said, it was so inappropriate. Basically, I'm standing down in the dark in front of my running car, and it's just like, what just happened?
Right.
I go, I knew that was, I knew immediately that's artificial. I didn't so much connect it with, they did that to me, but I go like, how do you gauge an experience like that? I've never had an experience like that before, where I'm looking at a flying thing, and suddenly I get all, like dopamine dump,
You know what's
That's
interesting
what I felt.
about that? Oh, there's so much is interesting, but like in that instance, like I could imagine an alien engaging in cognitive or emotional control. Like if they're going to take you, they're going to abduct you. They don't want a human who's kicking and screaming and fighting, so they're going to like get into your head,
Mhm.
calm you down, and all of that. But this was you were just on the ground.
Yeah.
Like from their point of view, I'm thinking, what does it really matter to them if you're freaking out and going crazy? Like they're just doing their thing. They're way above you.
Well, one of
But
the things that I've looked back on this particular case, because the second incident, I think there were good
your
valid
second
reasons.
incident even blows this one away.
Yeah, the second incident, I think there were good and valid reasons. This thing, I'm going like, I've often thought back, like, was it just I was at the right place at the right time? I mean, what are the chances that I'm going to leave the house at 7:30 and even see them above the Catalina Mountains? I might have been adjusting the radio, or
Well,
thinking
do
about
you
my
know if you
girlfriend.
had any missing time in that? I mean, what if they took
No,
you?
no, there was no missing time. Absolutely no missing time.
Okay.
I picked her up promptly at 8 o'clock. Like I said, that's one of the things that I emphasize, is that I was so precise on time, on getting places. People used to make fun of it. They used to be standing out front looking at their watch. Oh, you're right on the dot, And that's the way. Well, I can't say I'm that way anymore. But I was.
We
I
were
was right.
letting it all hang out in the 70s. No one
Yeah.
cared.
Yeah, I was I was very conservative then. I had very short hair and dressed very conservatively. When I first met my first wife's mother, I had a suit and tie on, had a blue double-breasted blazer and tie and white shirt, which was this was during the height of the hippie era.
Oh
If
yeah.
I would showed up with hair down my back and a vest and moccasins, I would have fit right in. But I dress like a talk show host, very, very, very different. I really stood out differently in that.
So they didn't take you. You weren't
No,
taken as far as
no.
it didn't seem like you would be. But they came for you a number of years later, which I think we'll get to in a second. So I think that there's some kind of, it seems like there's a relationship there. Like this might have been an interest in you.
There had to have been something, because like I say, I'm not saying I'm special or anything like that, but there had to be. How was it that they were where they were exactly when I left, and I even saw them? Because I went out that driveway dozens and dozens of times, and sometimes you look at the mountains, sometimes you don't. Yeah. I mean, if it was coincidence, I mean, how they even know I was looking at them? I mean, why they go like out of all the cars? Because there were cars, like I said, when I was looking down to the west on Country Club Boulevard, there were cars traveling back and forth. None of them were stopped.
And then they found a way to get into your head. So like they were not just aware of you, they knew how to get
to dial me up,
a message into your brain.
Yeah. Now that sounds. Now I sent you. I don't know. You probably didn't have time to look at Harvard scientists who worked in that field with DARPA and use of, Gary Nolan, Dr. Gary Nolan. Yeah, everyone talks about his UFO stuff, but really the CIA got a hold of him to look at Havana syndrome and the effects of directed energy microwave weapons.
Yes.
And we do, and it's open source knowledge that we've used such equipment as far back as the first Iraq War. It's what they referred to as the voice of God. It was an experiment.
There were experiments even in the early 70s.
Before that, as far back as the 60s.
Yeah.
Now, some of these, the Iraq one was an interesting one, because what they did is after bombing the hell out of these poor devils, they were coming, when they finally did surrender, blood coming out of their ears from the concussion bombs and stuff. They thought, hey, let's try this. And they used what they call, the program is called Voice of God, where they, using directed microwave transmission, beamed into their head drop your weapons, come out. This is Allah speaking. And they did. They dropped their weapons and came out. And,
So that's 1991.
Yeah, that's 91. And that's open source. You can look that up. That's out there. And so that's and in that interview that I sent you, they talk about the use of these directed energy weapons to do dopamine dumping. Okay, if you're on a battlefield and you want to get the enemy to surrender, shoot them up with this, this particular microwave transmission. Hey, they're all happy. They don't want to fight anymore. They all surrender, So if we can do it, can somebody else do it?
Right.
Right. Because you're just talking about stimulating the centers of the brain. If people think that microwave transmissions can't do anything to you, stick your head in the microwave oven for 30 seconds and see what that does. There have been people killed on ships that passed before the microwave emitters, the radar stuff, and just got cooked, because that's high energy microwave radiation, and it will go right through you. There's a number of riot control weapons. One that stimulates the water just beneath your skin. It won't damage you.
Oh, but it's painful as hell.
Yeah, it's extremely painful. You'll wish you were killed.
Exactly.
And so you do that to someone. Now do it to someone's brain. Now, if you know what frequency to do it to cause a dopamine dump or serotonin dump or whatever, that could be effective. It's almost scary to think of that anyone would even use something like that. We would be thinking of that. That, we can use this. Imagine how that could, if you think the Patriot Act can be misused, think about something like that, how that could be misused.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing this up because it helps to demystify some of the interactions that I think people are having with aliens. Let's call them that. In our previous conversation, in our other episode, I think you were really on point where you were saying, look, everyone's talking about consciousness and as if they're like from another dimension. But I think your attitude is they're very much using very advanced technology and they just know how to use it. And this is just another example of that. And I think that's a very healthy way to look at this because it's probably correct.
Yeah, Arthur Conan Doyle's character Sherlock Holmes had a quote that I use very often. All things become commonplace with explanation. One that I use all the time that people are mystified by, that you'll have two witnesses, and one witness sees a UFO and the guy standing right next to him, he doesn't see anything. Oh my God, how can that be? Was an affect of consciousness or they're cloaking? No, okay. There's a good reason for that. This is field propulsion craft. It's bending light. Bob Lazar described the one test that he saw in person on the ground. He said, when you looked at the ship from the side, you could see the ship. But when you walked underneath it, it disappeared because it was bending, the gravity emitters were bending the light around it. And it's the same thing. You got two people standing out there. One guy's at one angle. He's looking at it. It's right there. It's right up there in the sky. I can see it clear as day. And the guy saying next thing, what are you out of your mind? I don't see anything. And he's looking up there because it's bending the light around from where he's standing. So he doesn't see it. It's not cloaked. It's not deliberately cloaking. It's just doing what it does. Think of it as jet exhaust, basically. But it's exhaust that obscures light and time. Another thing that I hear, they're bouncing around and it would just kill anybody inside. That's because you're looking, I use it like it's my term, lensing, but that's actually, astrophysicists use that to describe effects of gravity on starlight in space. And you have the same thing on Earth. You're looking through a gravitational bubble, basically, you can, or if it's just using the emitters on the bottom or propelling it one way or another, you're not only distorting light, you're also distorting time. So just like when I was looking at that magnifying glass looking thing and the stars streaked, is because I'm looking through a gravitational lens, and it's distorting not just the light, but it's also distorting time. It's like catching up. So that when you see it bouncing around like that, they're not bouncing around like that. You're looking at it like a screwed up streaming session. You're just seeing bits and pieces of it. Oh, it looks like it bounced around like ping pong ball. No, it's nobody flies like that. How could you make an observation? You're just looking into that gravitational bubble. I sent you that Homeland Security video of the ship in Costa Rica when it goes under the water and comes out, and everyone's,
Yes,
oh,
yes.
look, it's split in two. It didn't split in two. You look at that, it's very clearly that second image above it, that's a ghost image. You can see right through it. And what you're seeing, again, it's a lensing effect. The force field is now wet. It's like the Predator in the movie. He gets all wet, and then you can, it screws it up. That's what happened. And so what you're seeing is a refraction. That's called the Morgana effect.
That's the best explanation for that, because I mean, a lot of people have seen exactly what you're talking about, that video, and it does look like it splits into two, but I like your explanation the most.
Yeah. It's another one that comes up all the time, and is the giant UFO effect. Again, that's a lensing thing. And Gary Nolan, he described it by accident. And he was talking about a case that he was tasked with studying, where everyone in the car was looking up and they see this giant UFO. Well, they take a picture of it, and when they take a picture, it's just a little tiny UFO, and he saw the picture and he says, no, it's a little tiny star-like looking thing. It wasn't a giant UFO. Again, it's a lensing effect. What you're looking at it through this giant distorted gravitational bubble or field, and it just makes it look huge. Look at it from a physics, aerospace thing. If that thing is, because normally particularly like the triangle, see this giant triangle stretching from one side to the other, like the Phoenix triangle, but it's no bigger than, its height is normal, like a 747 or something. So what are you telling me? It's going to take you like 20 minutes to walk from one side of the ship to the other? No one builds a ship like that. It wouldn't be practical, even if that's how it had to be built. Why? It's just
there are some, claims of absolutely enormous UFOs. But I think you're suggesting all of those may just be an effect of the lensing, or some kind of distortion of the field around the craft.
Yeah, exactly. Because
that's very interesting.
Imagine if you had a craft that big moving through the atmosphere, even with a force field, right? Because that's a force field. Bob describes one of the experiments. The guy working with, he says, "Go ahead, throw something at it." And so they turn the field on. He throws a golf ball at it and bangs up and hits the tiles and the ceiling and stuff. It just bounced right off it. Okay, imagine a ship that stretches from one mountain range to the other, traveling through the sky, even at slow speed. How many birds are they going to knock out of the sky?
Well, okay,
how many planes are they going to run into?
Fair enough.
So
would that effect show up on a radar? Would it also show up on radar as massive? Because there are radar trackings of absolutely.
Yeah, it would, because it's, again, you're beaming up what that microwave it's detecting is the physical force field. That's what it's detecting. And if it's lensed, how far does that force field extend? I don't know. We don't measure those kinds of things. How far can it extend? So yeah, you're going to get the same distortion that microwave.
That's fascinating.
Things. And also too, we have to stop thinking about the 1952 type radar than today's radar. It's much, much different. It's not this revolving thing that picks up some things and doesn't pick up anything. It's an array, and it's pulsing like this. It's going across it. Okay. So it's much more accurate than it was back in the day when it's just beep, beep like this.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You're missing a lot of stuff. But do we have data? They go, oh, we need more data. What more data do you need? Nothing. If we've ruled out Chinese and Russian, then yes, we can rule out Chinese and Russia. If these craft were Chinese, we'd all be speaking Mandarin now. There's no one that hides the type of technology. If you have this type of, then you've got force fields to protect your battleships. You need battleships because no one can take you on. You just put this field over your city or over your military installation. You don't need any of that stuff. It's just stringing it out. This congressional investigation that they had this summer. Oh, God. The public, and I understand because they have never done anything like this before. They will go to them and they say, "Oh, we're doing a an investigation and we're going to have a report to Congress. So they think, oh, they've got 20 people working on this and they got offices and they're going out in the field and they're going through records and they're looking. No, these were two guys. They were given a collateral duty to their day job. They didn't have an office. They didn't have anybody. They didn't even have a secretary. There's just two guys that knew nothing about subjects. Okay, we got to get up to steam on this and write a report. They come up with 9 pages. You know, that's
right.
Yeah, I mean, I understand because some of the law enforcement agencies I work with, I remember during 9/11, they were handing out collateral duties. Like a good friend of mine, I won't share their name, but they told me, Al, they just gave me new collateral duty today. I said, what's that? It's weapons mass destruction. I said, oh, cool. They said to me, I don't know shit about weapons mass destruction. And it wasn't like, we're going to bring you up to speed, or we're going to give you some crash courses, or we're going to send you out to Los Alamos, or
nothing like that.
Nothing like that. You're in charge of weapons mass destruction. And I knew at the time the intelligence was that somebody, you know, we had really good intelligence that they wanted to build a dirty bomb, put it in a semi truck and blow it up. You know, that was the rumors. They had no idea. They did. It was just, you got the collateral duty. And that's what they did to these two poor guys on the UFO thing. Said, you're in charge. Go out there. Don't embarrass us. You know, put together something to shut these guys up. That's what they did.
Yeah. No, I
mean,
agree.
you could have got Jacques Vallée in there to do something impromptu. They could have got you. You could have gone in there and just off the cuff, given a better report than they did. There was no real attempt. This NASA investigation is the same thing. Where is Jacques Vallée? Where is Avi Loeb? You know, why don't they have him, you know, in there? Why don't they have someone like yourself? Well, they haven't even tasked the NASA historian to bring in their photographs, and
that's never their policy. That's not their intention.
9 months, you couldn't even get up to speed. If you were teaching a class on the history of UFOs, they send you to Houston, you're going to give these guys a class on the history of UFOs. You'd need more than 9 months to teach them what you know, just to bring them up to speed.
They could read UFOs for the 21st Century Mind. There's my plug. That is my course.
Get the audio book.
Right.
And who's on there? There's no metallurgists. There's no advanced propulsion.
No, right, nothing.
They're all astronomers. And okay, no, we're not looking at a planet to colonize.
The most overrated discipline as far as UFO authority ever is astronomer.
Oh yeah,
it's overrated.
I dated an astronomer once, very nice woman, very knowledgeable, and but she didn't know anything about UFOs.
No, they never do.
They didn't know anything about advanced spacecraft or propulsion systems, or even what keeps an airplane in the air.
But we all think, oh, an astronomer. Well, they're like aliens. They're from space. Therefore, the astronomers must know everything.
Well, see, that even belies what their gist is, because they're saying, no, they're not aliens. They're transdimensional beings. They're time travelers, but they're not aliens. They can't be aliens. You know, they're demons and angels.
All right, now I have a feeling we're torturing some of the listeners because I've done such a build up for your second sighting.
Yeah.
And they're like,
okay,
come on, man.
Yeah.
What?
The second sighting. Okay.
This second sighting was what actually prompted you to leave the field of UFO research.
Yes.
You got out as a result of this.
Yeah.
So this is very important. So we want to fast forward, and I think it's 1978 now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or 79, 78?
It would have been the summer of 79, but 78, there's a lead up. And I don't think we're going to get into this today about, the Carter administration and everything, what led up to this. But I really believe in the lead up to this.
Well, we can say that the Carter, I'm so sorry.
I was going to say, the reason I reached out to you is I saw your two videos on APRO, and you kept saying, why didn't they task anybody to take over? And I got, it was me. I was supposed to take over. That Jim came to me, and this was right after the Jesse Marcel interview. He had a bad heart. He had had open heart surgery. I mean, he looked fine. I mean, I didn't expect him to. He passed away in '86. I would have called that, but because he was a hard worker, spry, no indication that he had, thought they fixed everything. But he came to me and he says, "Hey, Coral and I are looking for someone to, take over when we're gone, and we really like you and we really like your ideas." Because I was trying to bring it, hey, we need to do phylums and we need to do alien physiotypes and we need to do papers on this and have, our people write papers, all this stuff. And so I was trying to bring it into what I understood science to be and scientific method. And they really like that. And I really like them. But there wasn't an expectation that I'm going to take over tomorrow. I'm going to be appointed the head of APRO. But he said, we want you to do this. So that was in say spring of '78, somewhere there. And then that's when we get into the Carter thing, but we can talk about that later.
Well, we can do like a brief little, just a teaser. So the Carter administration, somehow you said in the other episode, they got a lot of money. APRO was getting money.
Yeah. We, in '76, '77, we moved into our bigger office. And I'm looking like, how can you afford all this? Because I think a dues for APRO was like $1 or $2. I mean, you got a mailer and go like, they must make a lot of money as pensions from the Air Force or something. Because I didn't understand where the money was coming from. And I'd ask Jim, once in a while, we get contributions. And he was not one for small talk. He was a great guy, very friendly. When he had something to say, he could, talk your ear off. But other than that, it wasn't small talk. You're not going to sit down and say, "Hey, what are you and Coral doing this weekend?" He didn't, wasn't on his ticket. "Hey, where are you going to vacation this year?" Didn't talk like that. But and I said, because we bought a what do you call it, microfiche machine. That we were taking all the files. Because like I said, we were getting all these letters and had all these files written up and all the bulletins, and we were putting them on microfiche. Now, people might not know what microfiche is today, but back then that was like state of the art. It's kind of like if you watch any movies with spy movies, micro dots. This was just a photographic method of miniaturizing a document, and they were on these film strips, and you had a machine, it looked like a television set, kind of like it was a viewer. And you put a spool on this side, string it through, put on that side, and you could roll it back and forth, and you could look for things. So
it was a good way of storing a lot of information in a small area.
Yeah, and some libraries still have those today. They still have old newspapers and stuff on them today.
Can we? I don't.
No. What? This is
briefly
relevant. Yeah, this is relevant. So I'm going like, this is expensive, and we're doing all, so where are you getting all the money? Donations, So then, get the Jesse Marcel interview. And right after that, he tells me, "Hey, we want you to take over." I think, "Oh, that's nice. Hey, yeah, this would be cool." And then in the spring of that year, this is in relation to the Herman case. It becomes important. Get contacted out of the blue. They want to open a museum in Michigan. Is it? Let me look at my flyer here.
I think you said Minnesota.
It's Minnesota. I'm sorry. Yeah, yes. Minnesota.
I think,
on the 57th floor of the IDS Center. Now, this is expensive real estate. This would be like, top of the World Trade Center. And they want to open a permanent museum on UFOs. We're called like,
or at least wait, the Carter White House.
Well, I didn't know that at the time. Okay.
But that's what it was. So we're going to get into this whole thing in more detail. But this is a teaser. So there's the Carter White House that actually contacted APRO to organize this type of a UFO museum.
Well, the first part, I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what this thing was going to be, a 6,000 square foot exhibit. And then when it takes off, that's when Jim came to me and said, like I said, we didn't talk about disclosure at that time, but we did feel that they're going to release this information sooner or later. It's coming out. We know it's right around the corner. Yeah. And he says, you know, they want to release it. They want to release the information. And that's when I learned, oh, that's what the museum was about. This was like a trial balloon. So what they wanted to do, and your viewers are going to, because they didn't live in that area, they might think this is unusual. Well, Carter loved the bicentennial train. I don't know if anybody remembers the bicentennial train, but what they did is they took the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and a lot of very valuable patriotic memorabilia from the Revolution, put on this train and toured it all over the country, and everybody got to be a part for the 1976 bicentennial. And everybody came, I mean, huge crowds came out to tour this traveling museum on the train. And so what they wanted to do, and I remember very distinctly what he said to me, they want to give the history of UFOs and their relationship to the Air Force, NASA, and the government. And they want to use this train to travel around, and they're going to do a whole museum. And that's where the Roswell thing came in. Those were going to be some of the artifacts. They were going to have the Roswell.
This is amazing. Well,
yeah. And I go, at the time, when I heard bicentennial train, I wanted to bite my lip.
It sounds like disclosure, and it didn't happen. So
no,
let's leave. I'm going to put a pin in that. Is that what?
Okay, we can come back to that and talk.
But this is a huge thing, and I don't think anyone has ever known about this.
No one did. No one did.
It's a hell of a teaser. Sorry, everyone, but we will come back to it. I want to come back to your experience now, your second one. So all of that's going on.
Yeah, all that's going on, and I started doing models and prepping. I sent you a copy of some of the pre-artwork. What the train would look like, what the exhibits would look like.
Oh yes, and we're going to show those when we come back to that.
And that was sent up line to someone in the administration, and they okayed it. They said, like what you're doing, keep going. And I'm going, oh, this is going to turn into something. But it wasn't. Today, people go, oh my God, this is cool. We expected it, so it wasn't like, oh my God. It was like, oh, it's about time. We're going to get this out. And again, you got to remember, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't, even in film, there were maybe 24 major film releases a year at that time from major studios. People didn't travel to places. Places had to travel to you, the circus, the rodeo, whatever was. It came to these cities. So there were only 3 networks. Anything that was on network, people would have been skeptical about. They wanted, if you were going to reveal the UFO thing, you had to have something that people could look at and see. So they're going to put all the stuff on this train, take it around, everyone get to see it, equal opportunity.
That is remarkable.
That's what they were going to do.
So you were involved in all this.
Yeah. So I was involved in all this, and of course, since '74, I've been talking to the most high-profile witnesses, abductees, all this time. I never equated with that first incident. That I never thought back. Really, only till recently, I started thinking, like, how do they know it's coming out at that time? Were they watching me? Was there something that I don't know anything about? But somehow, from 1974, I got involved with APRO, and I'm interviewing all these people, bringing a lot of attention to myself. I think now. And this is how the thing occurred. Let me just get into this particular incident. At the time, lived on Blackledge Avenue in Tucson, Arizona. And it wasn't far from Fort Lowell Park. It was really on the north edge of the city, almost into the foothills. The foothills, Catalina foothills, were in walking distance from where we lived.
Wait, are we in 79 or 78?
79.
79.
This would have been the spring or summer of 79.
Okay.
And so we lived at the time in very nice. People don't think of it that way now, but we lived in a very nice double wide trailer, which was kind of big deal for Tucson at the time. And like I said, it was close to the edge of town, a more rural area. And we were the very first trailer when you entered that park. Now, there wasn't all trailers. Across the driveway from us were 3 little small 1-bedroom bungalows. So I lived there with my wife. We were married, and south of us was an old lady with an Airstream trailer. She was a cat lady. She must have had 20, 30 cats. And they'd prowl around all day long. And at night she'd go in, take 15 of them with her. And the most wild ones she left outside. So my wife was very good to me. She was very, always wanted to, she tamed me basically. She turned me into a civilized gentleman. And you're going to bed. When I tell you you're going to bed. And we used to watch George Burns and Gracie Allen at, it came on Channel 11, KZAZ at 10 o'clock at night. And it was over at 10:30. And at 10:30, she'd promptly get up from the sofa and turn off TV. Okay, it's time to go to bed. And I go, ooh, go to bed.
Wow.
So, and every night, same thing. Well, this was a Friday night. She turns on TV, we'll go to bed. Well, every 3 or 4 days a week, when we go to bed, we turn off the lights. The old lady next door, she's already asleep. And the cats would see our lights off and they decide, oh my God, it's time to terrorize everybody.
Right.
they get up. There was a electrical pole behind that the trailer was hooked up to behind the trailer. And they climb that pole and get on the roof and start fighting with one another.
So you'd hear the cats on the roof of your trailer.
On the roof of the trailer. And it's just like they'd jump on it because they had to jump to it. And you hear bang. And then fighting back and forth, back and forth. And this happened 3 or 4 times a week. And my wife was a very heavy sleeper. She'd hit that bed. She was out in 30 seconds. Myself, I'd be awake for an hour or so, at least. And we had this particular Friday night, we'd just gone to bed. And I just pulled the covers around and bang, it startled me so bad. Like, oh God, the cat's going back and forth. I just was full of adrenaline. I'm gonna, these damn cats. So what I would do to get them off the roof is I'd get out of bed, go to the kitchen pantry, and we had a broom in there. I'd take the broom, I'd take the bristle end and smack it up against the wooden ceiling. There was a wooden paneled ceiling. I used the bristles because I didn't want to poke holes in the paneling and stuff. So I'd smack the broom. So that's
right, because you guys were renting this. This is kind of an important part of the story too.
Yeah, we were renting this. We didn't.
You don't want to damage the ceiling.
No.
You're hitting with the bristles.
Yeah, so I just hitting it with the bristles. And so that's what I did. I went out there and I'm smacking, trying to bang, 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 trying to get them off. And as I'm doing that, the kitchen was open to the living room. And the living room faced north towards Catalina foothills. And there were 3 large picture windows. And to the east was the door to the trailer. And that window was pebbled glass, so you can't see through it. It's all, kind of distorted and foggy. You can't see through it. But the 3 picture windows, my wife made beautiful, long, golden draperies that went from floor to ceiling. So I'm standing there banging on thing, and I noticed the lights, the drapes are all lit up bright. And that normally meant that someone had pulled in the driveway, and it would reflect on the drapes. Because people, right at the entrance of the driveway, there was a little sign with the name of the trailer park. I think it was Purple Sage Trailer Park, something like that. And there was a light, and people would pull in there and check their maps and stuff to see if they were lost or whatever. Or someone would be dropped off there. And so when I saw it all lit up, I thought, oh, someone's in the driveway, no big deal. I'm poking on the ceiling, the cats disperse. They finally get off. So put the broom back, go back to bed. And I get into the covers. It's like they knew. It's just like they're waiting. I get out of the covers, bang, they're back out. Oh, I was even angry. I was so angry because this had been happening week after week after week. I go back out and I grab that broom and I'm banging the bristles. And I get so angry. I say, oh, darn it. I'm going to spin the broom around and I'm going to use the wood handle. But I'm thinking to myself, be careful. Don't poke holes in the ceiling because you're gonna smack
you'll dent the wood or whatever.
Yeah, and because that it was almost like a veneer. It was just paneling out those old trailers were building. So, but I'm gonna be careful. I'm gonna pull back and I'm banging, and the cats disperse. And I look and I see it's still lit up, and I go like, the picture windows lit up. I'm like, I wonder who that is. And I'm thinking, because across the street there are some little bungalows. One of the bungalows belonged to my wife's girlfriend, whose dad owned the trailer park, and she lived in a little bungalow. Oh, someone must be dropping her off. I forget her name. Well, I thought, I'm just gonna peek out and see if it's her or somebody else is parked in the driveway. So I peek out the left. I'm sorry, it would be the right side window, the east side window, to look north down the driveway. And I look down there, and driveway's lit up, but there's no car there. And I go, huh. And so I thought it must be the other direction. So I look the other direction. I look south down the driveway, and that's when everything changed. And I remember my thoughts exactly. That is not what I expected to see. It was the first thought that went through my mind. What I see, it's down by the third bungalow, half on the driveway, half off the driveway in the dirt, is an egg shape. What I quickly discerned, this looks like a landing craft. Egg shaped, I'd say about size of a Volkswagen bug sitting on its rear end. Egg shaped, white with a lavender glow. It was bright enough that, like I said, it lit all the way down the driveway, but it was a soft light. It was bright enough to reflect. It's just like many people describe on the spaceship. There was light, but it's like you can't see where it's coming from. But it was coming from this ship. It was glowing. And two things I thought of, and one of your other friends, Deborah Jordan, described the same thing because she saw a very similar ship. I thought the same thing. How does anybody get in that little thing? And it had four little spindly legs, tiny. They were long, but they were just like rod-like. They were very.
Yes. You're referring to Deb Cobble, who in Bud Hopkins' book was given the pseudonym Kathy Jordan.
Yeah.
So that's what that was. And when in her experience, she was in Indiana, I think. By Indianapolis. She saw a similar egg-shaped craft with also very, very thin legs.
Yeah, exactly.
And her thought, I think, is like yours. She's thinking, how's that thing standing up on those? Because those are really thin legs.
Yeah, and that's exactly what went through my mind. And I didn't know anything about her case. Wasn't until 1980, 81. It was
it was in the 80s. Yeah.
So that hadn't even happened yet. And I'm just like awestruck. I'm going like, again, just like when I saw back in 74, the other one, I said, somebody else has to see this because no one's going to believe me. Now, there was a doorway open, a rectangular doorway. And because of the light, the doorway was black, but there was a thing hanging out of it. Now, it wasn't a creature. To me, looking at it, it looked to me robotic. I would describe it. It looked like the animated character Gumby. You're familiar with that stop motion animation? It looked Gumby. It was white, but the head was like a human-shaped head with no eyes, no nose, no nothing. And the arms were like Gumby arms. There was no elbow and the hands were mitten-like. There were no fingers. It was just mitten with a thumb. And it's leaning out of that thing, looking my direction and motioning to me with his hand like this, like come out.
Interesting. Now, did you think, was it roughly human size, like the size of an adult?
I'd say I'd say it was about at least 5 feet tall.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at I get the 12 feet from the ship. And I'm looking at the doorway, and its head didn't touch the top of the doorway, but it was cut off. The bottom of the doorway cut off just below its what would be where your knees would be. So I'm guesstimating it was about 5 feet tall, maybe 5.5.
Something of a normal size.
Yeah, normal size, human. But it didn't look human. It looked mechanical. It looked robotic.
Okay, and it's waving for you to come to see.
It's whether it was waving to me, I don't know, but it would look. That's how I interpret it. Is like come out, come outside. And I go, somebody else has to see this. No one will believe me. And particularly, I'm thinking I'm working with APRO and I'm seeing this thing. This wasn't late at night. This was maybe 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, right.
And you know, and you've shared this many times. How is it that these black triangles can come over, hover over a house in the middle of the night and nobody sees? Hey, this thing landed in the driveway. I mean, we were close to the edge of town, but anybody walking outside would have seen this thing, you know, sitting there in the driveway. But there it was. Go figure. So I'm looking. I got somebody's got to see it. So I ran back to the bedroom, get my wife, and I'm shaking her. Wake up, wake up. You got to come see this. You got to wake up. This is really important. And I'm shaking her. I pull the covers out. I literally set her up in the bed. And I say, wake up. You got to come see this. And she's going, oh, you know, she's groggy. What are you talking about? Oh, it's real important. You got to come out and see this. Come on, come on, come on. Wake up. Are you awake? She goes, yeah, I'm awake. I'm awake. I'll be there. Just give me a second. Give me a second. So I go back out, and I fully expect I'm going to get back out there and look through the window again. It's going to be gone. You know, that's how these things go, right? So I go back and I peek out there. No, it's still there. I'm like, oh my God, it's motion again. You know, like come outside, come outside.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I go like, oh, you know, I'm looking, and I look down the hallway, see if you know my wife's coming, and she's not. I don't see her coming down the hallway. It's like, oh, I got to go get her, and I run down. She's gone back to sleep. She's laying right back down. She's back to sleep. This I thought, no. It's just like trying to get someone out of a burning building. You know, I go, she's got to get up. She's got to get up. So I pull the covers completely down, and I take her legs and spin them out over the bed, and I set her up on the edge of the bed. I said, you got to wake up. You got to come see this. This is really, really important. Are you awake? And I'm shaking her. She's going, yeah. And she's getting a little angry, you know.
You would think that anyone in that situation, like if you're in a deep sleep, I mean, we all want to keep sleeping when we're in a deep sleep, but if someone's if your spouse is waking, you must get out of bed. Like most people would be like, what's going on? Like they would,
she was almost,
right? They'd get they would wake up.
But
not
since
her.
that time, she just doesn't sleep that deeply anymore, you know, because although, well, we'll get into that more, but at that time, she was just almost narcoleptic. If she went to sleep, she went to sleep.
Okay.
I mean, she felt sometimes we'd go out to a party or something, and she'd fall asleep at the party, and you couldn't wake her up. I remember one time we were at a party. She fell asleep. It was my grandmother's birthday party. Oh, she was almost 100, and she fell asleep at the birthday party. I'm not dissing her. She worked very hard. She was just really tired, and she fell asleep. And I literally carried her to the car like a baby.
Well, I was wondering if she was under some kind of influence because she wouldn't wake up, but she was a very super heavy sleeper. So
she was a super heavy sleeper.
Interesting. So you're trying to you got it. You got her legs off the bed.
I got her legs off. Now she's sitting up straight on the edge of the bed, and I run back out to the living room. I look out through the window again, and it's still there, but something's changed now. The little bungalow that it's in front of, there was the couple that lived there. We call them the hippie couple. I didn't know their name. I never spoke to them the entire time they were there, but we called them the hippie couple because they were hippies, you know, and, you know, they were dope smokers and nobody really associated with them. I don't know if they had any employment. They had no car, and they're living in this little, I mean, these bungalows were so tiny. I mean, they were broken into a living room, bedroom, and kitchen, but the whole thing would be bigger than a large bedroom. You know, it was very tiny. So it was very cheap and very affordable, and they were living there. And now they're outside in their bedclothes. The girl was wearing a long dark t-shirt, went down to her knees, barefoot. He was in a t-shirt, dark t-shirt, and hospital green pants, you know, type you tie, and barefoot. And they're not looking at the craft. They're not looking at the little robot thing. They're not looking at me. They're just staring out in space. And I can see them brightly illuminated by the glow from this landing craft. And they're
so the light is right there in front of them. The craft is right there. They're not looking at them.
If she raised her hand, she would have hit the ship. That's how close she was.
That close.
Yeah. She wasn't like far away. She was like I said, if she raised her hand, she would have hit the ship.
They're looking at it to space. So they're just like almost like they're like motionless.
They're literally like zombies. They look like, I'm thinking to myself when I look at them, they're hypnotized. That was my impression. because they don't see it, they don't see me, they're just staring off into space. I go, oh my God.
And they had not been out there
No, they had
originally.
not been out there. I hadn't seen them in days.
So sometime in the time that you went back to get your wife, they came out.
They came out. They came out of their little bungalow there.
Now,
where
could
they
this
were
have been
staying.
more than 5 minutes, or I'm thinking probably less than 5 minutes, right?
Oh yeah, it couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 minutes. You know, it likely.
I mean, just to visualize, you're trying to get your wife out of bed, and this couple comes out of their little bungalow. They're walking out, I assume, and they sit in these, like lawn chairs or out.
No, they weren't standing. They were standing up.
Oh, they were standing.
Yeah.
So they walk out. They're standing up, and they're looking out into the night
just
sky,
staring straight out, just like if they were paralyzed, hands to their sides.
I would love to have seen them walking out. Like that would have been a sight to see.
Yeah, it wasn't between where the ship was, and there were 2 doors to the bungalow. Yeah. One entered the kitchen, one entered the living room, and from where they were standing to either one of those doors wasn't more than 4 feet, 5 feet tops. Wow. They likely would have, because the bedroom was adjacent to the kitchen and there was a doorway inside the bedroom that went straight into the kitchen. I would presume they came out the kitchen door, which was adjacent to the driveway. So that was literally 4 or 5 feet from where I saw them standing. So amazing. It wouldn't have taken more than 30 seconds or so for them to walk out there. If they may have been already up and coming out, when I'm running back and forth, and that time they were out there standing there.
So they're just motionless. They're standing, they're looking up frozen, in the sky, oblivious.
Just like frozen, paralyzed, hypnotized.
Yeah.
So I look down the hallway. Is she coming? She's coming. I can see her sitting. My wife's sitting on the edge of the bed still. And still see her sitting there like, oh, I thought, do I go back and get her again? I go, no, she's up. She's not back asleep. She's going to be out sick. I got to check this out. Just like stupid me did with the car back in 74. Yeah. I'm going to go outside and get a closer look at this thing. And I remember opening the door and stepping out onto the stairs. We had 3 stairs, went down. And I had just a couple of weeks before put AstroTurf on the stairs, make them pretty. This is going to be nice. And I'm in my bare feet, so I remember the prickly, AstroTurf grass on my feet.
Yeah.
And looking down at the ship, and then nothing. It's just like my memory. You say memory wipe or whatever. It was just nothing. It was just like everything stopped, and then the next thing I remember, I'm climbing a ladder.
Okay. So wait, we have a break.
Yeah.
Step out. You're feeling the AstroTurf under your bare feet. And that's your final memory.
That's my final memory there at the trailer.
At that moment.
Now
you're on a ladder.
I'm on a ladder, a rust ladder. I can feel the rust. You know how you paint I don't know. In the desert, you're painting things constantly and the paint dries and chips off and rust happens. And it's just, and I can feel this rust. I can feel it on my bare feet. I can feel it on my hands. I can feel the weight of my body hanging as I'm climbing. It's a small ladder. It's not a big ladder, a small ladder. And it's like I'm coming to. I'm going like, what? I go, what the hell?
Right.
Where am I? And it's like flooding back in. I look up at the sky. I can see it's still nighttime. And then it all starts to come back. Oh, I was at the trailer. Oh, I saw this thing in the driveway. It looked like a landing ship. And where am I now? And I'm looking around and I recognize where I was. It was not far from where the trailer is. There's University of Arizona Agricultural Center there. It's a satellite campus. And I'm on one of the silos. And I sent you a picture of that.
Yes.
And that's the first time I saw that silo again since that night. Because the rest of the time, every time I've been back there, I've avoided that area. I didn't want to go back there. I knew.
How far was that silo from your trailer?
I'm gonna look it up on Google Maps, but it couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 miles. I mean, if you had to walk it, you could, but you'd be really tired. But it wasn't far away. It's on Campbell Road near River Road, and across from it is just desert expanse. There's nothing out there beyond the agricultural center. And so That's where they do all the genetic experiments. That's where they do cattle hybriding, and that all that stuff is done there at the agricultural center. So I'm on this ladder. I'm going, I'm getting my wits together. I go, what am I doing? Why am I here? And I look down, and at the bottom, it's a typical, stereotypical, what I've been described for years as a gray alien. And he's looking up at me. And just like on that time in 1974, I hear in my mind, Allan, it's time to come down. We got to go, and I look at him and I go like, oh yeah. It's like, I remember that's my friend. That's my friend. And I promised them if they let me go with them, I wouldn't fuss when it's time to go back. I'd do whatever they said. And and I felt like, oh, I've known this guy for years. That's how I felt. And I go like, oh yeah. Well, I don't want to disobey. And I start climbing down. And the next thing, I'm waking up in my bed. It's sunny Saturday morning. My wife's on the end of the bed, brushing her beautiful hair, and again, it all floods back in. I remember the night. I remember, oh, I saw this and I did this and I was on this silo. And I was like, did that really happen?
Right.
And I go like, did I, I go like, I go like, what or what? And instead of saying good morning to her, I'm irritated. I go like, boy, you're a real heavy sleeper. That's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And she says to me, she goes like, yeah, what were you trying to wake me up for last night?
Right. You remembered.
And
that confirms.
Yeah. That my heart skipped a beat when she said that. Because I go like, oh my God, if I tried to wake her up last night and she remembers that really happened. And so I didn't say anything else. I just was like awestruck. And she asked me again, why were you trying to wake me up? And I go, the cats. Okay, wait, I need to check the mail. And this is Saturday morning. The mail hasn't come, but what I wanted to do was go outside and see if there was any evidence.
Didn't you also check the ceiling?
Well, I did on the way out. This was the thing. I get dressed.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I get dressed and I go out and I pass, the where I was hitting the broom was above the sink in the kitchen. And I look up the corner of my eye and I see the holes where I banged that broom right through the ceiling. I'd be terrible dents. I go like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble for that.
So that all happened as well.
Yeah, that happened. I actually did hit it. And I go, oh my God. So okay. I go outside. I go down the driveway looking at where this thing, there's no physical evidence. There's no like little marks where the feet would have been, because it's asphalt and what we call caliche, which is very hard packed sandstone-like material on the sides. There was just absolutely no physical evidence, no burn marks like at Sakaro, or there was nothing
like indicate
that anything had happened. And I go like, I'm thinking, walking back to the trailer slowly, going like, what do I say? Do I say anything to her? Do I call Jim? I need to think about this. And having just done this, agreed to this museum thing, and they're going to do this big reveal, and I'm going to be the head of APRO, and all this. And if I come out and say, oh yeah, there was an alien ship landed in my driveway, no one's going to believe me. They're going to think I'm a lunatic, or this is a publicity stunt, or I'm just trying to push APRO out, or I'm, and what would the administration think if I'm talking this way? And they're going to pull the contract,
right.
And they're going to think I'm a lunatic, and they won't trust APRO. And so I go like, I need to think about this. And I think initially I thought, well, I'll pull Jim aside, I'll talk to him, but it's like anything. If you don't come out with it right away, like I did with the first one, you're not going to come out with it. You're going to start thinking about anything. Well, all the bad things can happen, because I was thinking back at Travis and Moody, who disappeared, and how Herman, his wife divorced him and he lost his job. He worked at Sears. He lost his job, and everyone was calling down like, do you really, really want to, get involved in this? And I thought, I need to think about it some more. So I didn't say anything to my wife. And I, as I was sharing with you too, it wasn't that I thought she wouldn't believe me. I trusted her. She would believe me, and she would still love me. But I didn't want her to be burdened with, yeah, she's married that crazy UFO guy.
Yeah, right.
You know, I was concerned that, yeah, this is going to affect me. You know,
It was a massive stigma.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it was huge back then, because
Yeah.
it wasn't like it is today at all. Nothing at all. So I go, like, I need to think about this. So a couple of days went by. Wednesday comes by, and I get home and I hear a knock on the door. And it was Dawn. Dawn was the manager of the park. His daughter was my wife's, a friend of hers, her girlfriend. And knocks on the door. I open up, and, hey, Dawn, what's up? He goes, hey, Al. He says, have you seen the hippie couple over there in the bungalow? And I would have loved to see my face at that time, because I flashed back to that picture standing outside the little landing craft in the middle of the night. And I'm thinking, in my inner voice, I'm thinking, yeah, last time I saw them, we were standing outside a landing craft with a robot in it. You know, I'm not going to tell them that.
How do you say that, right?
Yeah, they were standing right there down the road. Yeah, spaceship there and robot. And
oh my
I go, like, no, why do you ask? You know?
Sure.
He says that I think they skipped out on the rent. He says, I think they're gone. I think they skipped out. And I go, really? Yes. Yeah. I said, oh, I don't know. I haven't seen them. He said, do you mind? Can you come over with me? He says, I want to go through their place and see if they took their clothes and if they left. And I want a witness with me so they don't say I stole from them or anything. And I said, yeah, sure. So now I'm curious, you know.
Of course.
Well, you know, what's going on?
Of course.
Get a look in here. So we went in through the kitchen door, which, like I said, these places were so tiny. You have a little tiny, it almost looks like a child stove, you know, real tiny stove. And they had the sink right across from that, and a little tiny dining table. All the plates are on there dirty, just like they finished dinner and they never picked them up. All the dirty dishes are still in the sink, never been washed. Now, these were furnished, so it wasn't like if they left, they were going to take the furniture with them. So, and the furnishings were there, TV was there. The TV did come, it wasn't their TV. So stuff's there. So we go from the kitchen to the living room, a little tiny living room. Then we go through into the bedroom, a little tiny bedroom, little tiny. So, and there were still clothes on hangers in the closet. The closet was wide open. There was clothes on it, not a lot of clothes, you know, t-shirts, jeans, stuff like that. There were clothes in the drawers. In the most telling part, I know this from, you know, as having looked at different crime scenes over the years, and it's certain things you go, people don't leave without certain things. Their little knickknack bric-a-brac stuff was still on the dresser, you know, things that,
like little like figurines, that type
figurines and stuff, little personal things. You don't leave that behind.
Those were really big in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Those things were everywhere.
Yeah.
Like Hummel or
yeah, little things like that,
right.
little tiny vases, things like that, and they were still there. It was probably the only things that she owned. I mean, it didn't look like they had any money. And in the bathroom, all their toiletries were still there. Their shampoo, their toothpaste in the cabinet, and everything was still there, hairbrushes and stuff. And so I said to Don, I said, maybe they're just visiting somebody. My actual thought at the time was, they, just like me, they freaked out. And they left. They thought, oh my God, you know, aliens, abduction, blah, blah, blah. Whatever happened to them, if they were, you know, went to the universe with me or whatever, or got in that ship, I figured they just remembered the whole thing and they just freaked out. And they, you know, just hoofed it and took off. I said to Don, oh, maybe they're visiting friends. Maybe they'll be back, you know. So, well, if, you know, if they don't, you know, they don't come back, I'm calling the cops, you know. It's a civil thing. The cops aren't going to do anything, but, he did later call the cops because they didn't come back, and he reported that they skipped out on the rent. I'm sure the police couldn't care less.
They were never heard from by you guys. Is that right?
Never saw them again, because
they just disappeared.
They were just gone. They never came back. Don presumed that they just skipped out because they were hippies, you know.
And they didn't have a car.
Yeah, and they didn't have a car. That wasn't unusual. You know, we used to see them walking, you know, to the grocery store. The grocery store was only like a block away,
Mm.
and it wasn't uncommon. I used to walk around quite a bit at the time too. I mean, it's a small town. It's not like today. It's not like today. Even today, I walk everywhere. I'm always walking someplace. And back then, that just wasn't uncommon. People would walk to here, they'd walk to the store, walk to the park. We used to walk down to the park all the time. In the evening, we'd go like, "Hey, let's go to the park and sit under a tree or whatever."
Well, these people walked somewhere, and
Yeah,
they apparently kept walking because they were not
yeah,
seeing.
yeah. And now people they talk about. I'm hearing more and more about. Hey, what about people that were abducted and weren't brought back? How would you know? They talk about people missing in the national parks and stuff, which actually that's more likely bear attacks or falling off cliff. But if someone
Well, some of those cases are very bizarre. I mean, without a doubt.
some are very bizarre. Like
Yeah.
this one, the last time I saw them, and like I said, I don't call myself an experiencer. I call myself an eyewitness. I saw them standing outside what looked to me like a landing craft that someone later on described the same thing. You don't get those, again, you don't get those particular details. And the spindly little legs had little like suction cup things at the bottom, the egg shape. It was like an Easter egg shape. It wasn't like a Tic Tac, because some people, they're calling everything a Tic Tac now. Now this was like an Easter egg.
Yeah, yeah.
No rivets, no seams. That light white, it was white, but had a lavender hue to it. Rectangular doorway with the Gumby-like robot in it. And I call it a robot because it didn't look like a living creature.
That was different from the gray alien that you saw at the bottom of the stairs.
Very different. The gray alien looking down at him, like the others had said.
So presumably there were at least two creatures in that craft, which the way you described it, you said it was about 12 feet high?
Yeah, yeah.
Couldn't have been that big. I mean, I don't know how many people could have fit, or how many beings it could have fit in.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the things I when I first saw it, I thought, how could anybody get in there? I mean, it's so small. Now, I shared with you, do you remember anything else? And over the years, I've had what I would call 3 flashbacks. And I wouldn't say them because I don't look at this like PTSD or anything like that. I mean, it was just like you forgot somebody's name that you knew real well, and then you remember it later. It's just like, oh yeah, that's
right.
Jacques Vallée. I remember that. And that's what these 3 memories are. The 3 memories are, the first one is fighting at that trailer door to keep the door closed. I'm struggling at the trailer door and something's on the other side, trying to pull it open, and I'm trying to keep it closed.
But wait, you were outside though.
I was outside. Now, what I postulate could have happened, what if I stepped out onto that stairs and there were 2 things on either side of that doorway and grabbed me? What would I do?
Run back in?
Try to get back in.
Yeah.
And that, the whole thing seemed to me like something went wrong with whatever I was doing with them or their intentions were. Something went wrong. And
okay, so you're trying to keep them out.
I'm trying to keep something out. And the way that trailer door was, it was like a refrigerator lever door kind of like thing. That's how the handle was.
Oh, okay.
Where you pull it out, and I'm pulling it back in, and I can feel it tearing against my fingers, the pressure because of the strength of whatever is trying to pull it open. And that's one flashback memory. It's just like, bang. Oh yeah, I remember that. The other one is, and this is so typical, waking up on a table. Now, I wouldn't call it a table as much as I would call it a tray. It felt like white. It was white. It felt like metal or porcelain. And I cannot move my hands, feet, or anything. I can move my fingers, but it's like my wrists are restrained, my feet are restrained. And I'm laying on this. I can see other tables in front of me, on the side of me, going off into the dark. And I see one of these little gray aliens walk by, stops for a second, put some type of tool at the edge, at the end of the tray or table, whatever I'm on, and then walks, out of, the other direction. And I remember thinking in that flashback, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here.
Okay.
And the last flashback I remember is waking up in the bedroom, and one of these little gray aliens is backing out. and I'm like freaked out. Like they're here. That's what I'm thinking in my head. I want to scream, but I can't scream. And I go, they're here. Those are the 3 flashbacks I've had over the years. If those were suppressed memories and I'm just getting them back, I don't know. It's been 44 some years. It's been a long time, 40 years, 44 years. I have to look at. But those are the only other fragments I remember. And like what I said, I got back to her and tried to close the door. That's just postulation. I'm just speculating that why would I be back in trying to keep the door closed unless I was attacked? I was surprised.
Sure, yeah. That's totally. Do you have any idea how, have you ever guessed how long that whole experience might have been? Because, you had the blackout when you were on the steps, and then the next thing you know, you're on the ladder. How much time do you think actually?
That had to been that had to been an all night thing. It had to be all night. It couldn't have been just. I don't know how they got me there, and I don't know how long I had been there.
You don't know what time it was when you got brought back, obviously.
No, it was all I know. If that waking and seeing the thing leaving the bedroom, if that it was a memory of that same night, it was still dark. So it was.
You're thinking several hours, I assume.
Well, when I saw it initially, you're talking 11 o'clock at night, and the last memory I had before morning was still dark. So 6 hours, at least. I would think. Now, there's no way of quantifying that. It could have been 2 hours, it could have been 3 hours, but that was the window of time that was available that anything could have happened. And like I said, when I even back then, when I thought about it, I'm going like, they landed freaking right in the driveway. Any car driving by could have seen that. Any car coming out could have seen it. If anyone looked out their window, they would have seen it sitting right there in the driveway.
Yeah.
And I go like, how stupid or desperate would it be to land something right there, and think they wouldn't get caught? But it happens all the time.
It happens all the time. There's got to be some kind of protocol. Someone comes by, they do a little, like in the movie Men in Black, the little flashy thing. You just wipe the memory.
Yeah, somehow they're able to do it. Deborah's same thing. They land in her freaking backyard. Where
Deb Cobble, that's right.
Yeah,
and I think, her interview's on this channel, and she is an absolute 100% stand-up gal, man. I love her. She's a great friend of mine and of Tracy's, and I'm just telling you, she is as honest as the day is long. And so when she says something happened, I know it happened. And she had, her memory was totally tampered with.
Oh yeah.
Almost immediately. By her experience.
Yeah. Well, when they released Betty Hill, they told her, you won't remember this. And if you do remember it, you will remember it differently than Barney. And so when she shared that with me, I go like, oh, so they're scrambling their brains. They're anyone has this Havana syndrome that people that Gary's studying. Yeah, it's scrambling people's memories. They're going like, I don't remember, something happened. I had a seizure, and if you're shooting stuff into someone's brain, either microwave transmissions or some type of high intensity energy, you're gonna really mess with someone's memory, because you're just memories on the brain. They're electrochemical, and you can scramble them. It's just by high intensity electricity. People that went through shock therapy or get struck by lightning, it can really screw with the memory.
You ever think about doing hypnosis? You kept this particular incident has been very, very private, so I can see why. But have you thought about it?
Oh yeah, for years and years and years, and having seen other people go through it, I go like, oh gee, if I got regressive hypnosis, is there something else that would come up? And I'm totally open to it. And I wish some of the old timers were still around that Jim worked with. And I wish I would have done it then, but Yeah, I have no, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be adverse to it at all.
Well, there's some pretty good hypnotic regressionists out your way, out in
Oh yeah,
California. Well,
it's
you're up in the Bay Area, but
yeah, yeah.
they're out there. There's a few
Yeah,
pretty good ones.
I'd want to find someone who is reputable, someone of the quality of like a Nolan or something like that, who
Yeah.
understands the physiology and the now I can say from a health standpoint, because they're studying, people exposed to these things, do they have any damage? I say just absolutely the opposite. I had a heart scan just not even 2 years ago, and they said I had a heart of a healthy 20-year-old. And the reason I had when my dad passed,
you're a little bit of a freak of nature. You work at it though. You
yeah,
work
I
at
do.
it, and
I do.
it's a lot of
Yeah,
effort, and you're
yeah. It's I believe in prevention
yeah.
is 90% of it.
Yeah.
And my dad died of congestive heart failure. He was 89, but there's a lot of longevity in my family. My grandmother lived to 103.
Yeah.
My mother lived to 94. And when my dad passed away, I thought, you know what? I think I'm good. I don't have I'm very healthy and very strong, but I should get it checked out because sometimes heart problems are genetic, and there can be a genetic propensity to heart, closure, to cardiovascular closures and stuff. So I should just get checked out. So I got a scan.
All right.
And they said, hey, AAA, your heart's best we've ever seen. I said, well, when should I come back? And maybe 4 or 5 years. They said, come back when you're in your 80s.
All right.
Get another
Awesome.
scan. So I don't know if I've never had any physical problems that other people have described.
You've suffered no ill effects.
No ill
from
effects.
this.
No hitchhiker effect. Nothing like that. Because I hear that all the time. They fall. No, nothing. I've never seen anything else during this time. Never had any lost time or anything like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you had those two experiences in the 1970s. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then you left shortly after that. You left the UFO field. You kind of sort of made yourself a little less and less available, I think you said.
Yeah, it was
kind of backed out of it.
It was a slow no, basically.
A slow no.
And that was easy to do at the time because, nobody made long distance calls. You make one long distance call, you like $100. It was very expensive. So it wasn't like I was calling Jim, hey Jim, how you doing? And he wasn't small talk kind of guy anyway. We did correspond. You can see that those letters I sent you. I think they're dated 82. And I just didn't communicate, just stopped communicating. I'm sure I thought, well, what the hell happened to Al? We could use him now.
Well, they passed away not long after that.
Yeah. He had Jim passed away in 86.
Yep.
And Coral in 88. So they didn't survive very, very much longer. And Coral, I can see, because she was, like I said, very frail. And I don't know if she had any medical ailments, but she was frail. I mean, she didn't use a cane or a walker or anything like that, but today she probably would. I don't know. She's very feisty, so she probably would have resisted that. I don't know.
I've always wanted to meet the two of them, especially Coral. And because I've always known that she had this feisty personality, but she was also she was a good writer and just very obviously really smart. And I just would have loved to have chatted with her.
And she had a mind like a trap. I mean, she didn't forget anything. She knew I wish I had that acumen that she knew dates, places, times. She'd go back, I was so-and-so, and he said this, and they did that, and it was this time and date. Just like any used to be a good reporter. They were really good at that, and she, like I said, I think I definitely believe Jim was more than just APRO. Like I said, he was either an asset or directly working with some type of military intelligence or one of these,
that's very, very interesting. Oh, and one other thing that we said in the last program, when you talked about the fact that the APRO investigators were, or at least you guys working with the Lorenzens, were not encouraged to write reports. But what you told me during our break, would you just repeat that? Like you were telling them to Coral, and she was writing them all up.
Yeah.
Is that how it was?
This is people, and again, this is in hindsight because I didn't know about anything about intelligence or counterintelligence or counter surveillance or anything at the time. But having actually taught this, one of the first things you teach anybody in a counter surveillance situation, or if they're doing surveillance, two things: never carry any ID on you. Nothing that can identify who you are or what you're doing there. Never, 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 never. Not even, if you're on your own territory. Never carry anything. Number two, never write anything down. Always have that plausible deniability. So if you're arrested or if you drop it, I remember one case I worked, guy dropped his passport right underneath the surveillance camera. Like, how golden is this? This is what we call felony stupid. He's surveilling this place and he drops his freaking passport right underneath the camera.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So that's,
that's why you don't carry that stuff. That's why you don't do that.
well, it's just interesting. I mean, yeah, we discussed this in the other episode, but the fact that APRO was training at least some of their investigators. I mean, I can't imagine the international ones. I mean, they would have to write a report to give it to Jim and Coral.
I don't know if they called or if they wrote a letter.
That's a lot of long distance.
I was never allowed. Jim never said, "Hey, Al, here's a dozen letters. You open them and tell me what they say." Never did that. He was the only one that personally opened those letters and read them. And he didn't read them out loud. He just would sit there at the desk, open it up, read it. Mm-hmm. Some he put down. He put one stack, and others he put in another stack. And
so they did all that stuff themselves.
Did themselves. This was, people imagine when they hear like we had 1,500 people, they're thinking of like stuff today. Like McDonald, who was right there in Tucson, at the university. It's not like we went and saw him every day or he was in and out of the office all the time. I saw him one time. The guy I saw the most was Wendell. I mean, he was always around, and he, like Jim, I presumed, yeah, he's on pension, because he didn't have any other trade or anything. He wasn't like a stock investor or something. So where he had a very nice home within it many times out in the Pantano Wash area, and beautiful home. Very luxurious, but they were ranking. I think he was a colonel. I think.
I think he was. Yeah.
So they would have had good pensions, and it wasn't as expensive today as it is. Today back then. Yeah. But it was a different time. You didn't ask people, where do you get your money? It would have been rude. How do you get all this money? I knew it wasn't drug trafficking or anything.
So do you think? Well, back to APRO, and then I want to wrap it up by just talking about your experiences again one more time. But you don't think that they were doing, or do you think that they were actually doing intelligence work for the United States government in some capacity?
I absolutely think Jim was, because again, when you ask me, 800, they stopped Blue Book in '69. Condon report says nothing to see here.
Right.
MUFON was a wild-eyed dream at that point. They had just got their feet wet. We were in the thick of it. We were doing everything. We were gathering everything. 800 reports a month. You don't do that as a passion project. Somebody was funding that. Somebody was doing that. Condon says, nothing to see here, go away. We continue to do investigations. We continue to assemble information. I think that was just kind of like doing it low key, because in the museum thing, they had two sources. They had the written source, Project Blue Book, and they had APRO. Now, originally I thought the museum was a private consortium, but like the documents that I sent you that shows this out, there's no like paper trail. There's nobody like, who's the director of the museum? Who's funding this? Because if I have museum exhibits now, and you got 20 people that want to take credit for this exhibit, and there is nothing like that. There's no paper trail. Like,
all right,
who's spending this kind of money on this kind of museum? And in Minnesota, are you kidding me? Who's going to go to Minnesota to see a museum? It's not like,
No offense to
wasn't a
people from
problem.
Minnesota. It's a wonderful state, but yes, I take your
Yeah,
point.
yeah. Well, I'm not just in Minnesota, but as you're going like
It's a
back then,
little out of the way for a lot of
yeah,
the
you didn't
country.
jump on a plane. People vacationed in state. It's not, again, it's not like today where people travel over, and I know friends I've been
Right.
all over the Middle East, and I've been to Asia and stuff. But you didn't do that back then. I mean, my sister went to Europe with her high school band, and that was huge. Like, oh my God, she went to Germany and Austria. It was like, oh, that's the biggest thing in her. Wow, she went to Europe.
Yeah.
We just didn't.
Right.
Today it's like no big deal. Back then, you did. That
It
was one
was
of
a
our
big deal.
challenges. Is like we wanted to go to the sites when someone said, "Hey, we've got a case." We wanted to have, and MUFON has this now. They have these quick teams that go out and check this stuff out. But that's what we wanted to do. There was no money for that. We would have had a hard time getting to the other side of the state, to look at a cattle mutilation or
I'm
something.
just trying to think then the relationship. So it makes sense. The U.S. government they close down Blue Book, but they're still interested in looking at those UFO reports.
Yeah, people say, well, like ATIP. Well, what were they doing in between ATIP and they were doing APRO?
Well, the thing is, the APRO files. I mean, this is famous, infamous. What's happened when APRO went belly up when the Lorenzens passed away? I remember talking to Bob Dean about this. Bob Dean was a board member of APRO. Did you ever meet him? Did you know him at all?
I did. I do know him. I know him well. The NATO connection and what he saw while I was at NATO. Yeah,
I adored him.
Now. They're all gone.
I adored the man. He was.
But very nice.
He said to me the loss of the APRO file. So they were given away. They weren't even sold to a woman named Tina Choate and Brian. The hell is his last name? Someone will write it below in the comments. I have it somewhere. I don't remember. They came in. They had us kind of sweet talked Allan LaVigne in his last years as well, because he died around this same time, late 80s, and he had cancer, I believe. And they got in good with him. They convinced him to relocate or to start up a UFO center where they and they leveraged that Heine connection to the APRO board and pitched. They said, we're going to start up this UFO center. We'll take your files and we'll make them public. And of course, what they ended up doing is they sealed those files off from everyone for the rest of all time.
In this conversation, you have to ask yourself, or I would ask myself, was that an operation? Did they
Brian Myers, that was the other one's name.
Yeah.
Myers.
Did whoever is, those are the ships are on the bodies buried. Did they want to get that? Hey, no. That we're bringing it, because there had to have been hundreds of letters that we never read.
Exactly.
Didn't fall up. So would you want that just all out there? And stuff like this museum thing that would have got out. I mean,
it's very, very sketchy and suspicious what they did, and you just have to think there's something
more to it.
Some kind of deep state shenanigans going on here, where they just wanted those files kept away from the public.
They want them disappeared. I mean, just like Moody. I mean, and so I say, again, from 54 to 60, they're working out of Holloman, and then they moved to a SAC base with Hughes aircraft and nuclear missiles surrounding and stuff. That's all there is. I mean, it's a hotbed of espionage. It's one of the big targets of the Cold War. You've got everybody. Now looking back, you would have had everybody looking. Everybody would have been interested in what they were doing. So
the thing about the Lorenzens, I mean, I'm all about uncovering the UFO cover up, but I will, with the Lorenzens, even with this information, I mean, they're out there in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. These are patriotic Americans, and you got to think, and Jim's in the Air Force. You just have to assume they're sharing what they feel is their duty, right?
Oh yeah.
I think that's how it had to be.
Even back then, we didn't. There wasn't a malicious like, oh, the government's. We go, well, of course, it's it could be any serious. I never believed, even then, because I knew a good friend of our family worked at the Nels Range, worked on the SR-74 Blackbird, And you hear, oh, some of these UFOs, they were it was Blackbird flying around. That thing flew like 5 times, the speed of a bullet at 80,000 feet. No one saw it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a
Such a
spy
goofy
plane.
explanation.
It's a spy plane. The whole idea of a stealth aircraft is that no one should see it. I mean,
It's a
if
good
you're
point.
seeing the B-52 and the 117 and the Blackbird, they screwed up.
They're doing something
I mean,
wrong.
yeah,
Even the
that's the whole
U-2, that was
yeah,
used as an
yeah.
explanation.
And there were U-2s at Davis Monthan. They didn't just fly out of Nellis. They had them at Davis Monthan as well.
Huh.
All the during the Vietnam War, all the B-52s, they were coming out of Davis Monthan. I mean, they had you'd hear those things go off. We were when I was a kid, we were right in the flight path, and my mother used to she used to buy these inexpensive round mirrors that she put on the wall with little like Asian painting on it, like mountains and
Oh, yeah, okay.
and little cranes and stuff. And the Phantom 4 jets would come over and they'd go into afterburner and just that mirror would come off every Saturday morning, bang, the mirror would come off the wall and shatter. And she'd go to Ben Franklin 5 and dime and buy another one.
Get another one.
Yeah, get another one. But it was very active. Everyone, you either worked at Hughes Aircraft or you worked at Davis Monthan. That's what supported the city. Now, today, it's much, much different. There's a lot of tourism, a lot of retirement, and of course, the university is big. But back then, and I think you had mentioned this, people don't understand how universities really evolved. They're really, a lot of the research on universities, particularly here at Berkeley with DARPA and stuff, that's an extension of military, operations and research and stuff. The whole Naval War College and their experiments and stuff all out here at Berkeley. Ship design and all that. Harding, who was worked there at Berkeley as an engineer, all that is part of the military-industrial complex. I mean, they're funny. Hey, try this. Hey, try that. Do this. Experiment with this thing. And most of the time, they don't even know what they're doing. They're going like, again, the information doesn't go offline. They just say, build me this widget. We want to see what it does. They get funding for it. They build it. They have no idea. Is this part of a laser? Or is this part of an aircraft? Or is this simply to tie down toilet seats in battleships? You don't know. They just give you the money, you do it. And again, it was very typical now looking back at APRO. It was all the information would go up, nothing came down. I'd pass on a report to Jim. I'd brief him. This is what he said. This and this and this and this is this. Okay. He never came back to me and said, this is how this turned out. This is what we're going to write up. This is what we're going to say. That never happened. That never happened. And having had that experience with other federal law enforcement is exactly what they do now. They'll say, they'll give you a task, say this or this, look at this or this. You do it. You bring the information. This is what happened. This is what we saw. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you.
Well, in our next conversation, I will want to talk about the museum, the Carter Initiative. I mean, we talked a little bit about it here, but there's more.
Oh yeah.
Is there any other final thoughts you have on your own personal experiences? I mean, this second one really spooked you from the UFO field, and you got out after that.
Yeah, I just didn't want. I felt, and this sounds like a weird thing, I felt dirty. I feel like, oh my God, I don't want to be involved in this. It's just
what do you think they did? What do you think was done to you? You were on a table. Do you have any idea? Do you have any guess?
I have no idea at all. That's just a flashback. It's like several frames from a video in your mind. I remember the sensations and feelings, and I remember struggling that I couldn't move on, but I couldn't tell you if that was a strap or if it was somehow, electronically I was held down or something. But I remember trying to move my hands and I couldn't. My feet were tied down somehow. But beyond it, having seen what happened to Travis and Moody and Herman and I go like, I don't want anything to do with this. This is too weird for me. And remember, I was much younger. And I did have experience. I didn't know, as I was sharing with you, there's a world, and people don't understand this, and even people that know what I did in counter surveillance and all this. I remember one time I shared with the person, I said, when you go to that particular consulate, because I knew they were going to the consulate all the time, I said, you don't give them your cell phone, do you? And the gal said, well, yeah, of course. They always ask for my cell phone. I said, never, ever bring your cell phone into that consulate again. Because I said, what they do with that cell phone is while you're in there talking with whoever you have your meeting with, they're downloading everything in that cell phone. Everything is being downloaded. They're taking that information, they're correlating your contacts and everything. They're taking as much information. They may never use it. It may not be important to anybody else. But I said, never do that again. So, oh no, they wouldn't do that. And I'm friends with this. And I'm like, no. They're exactly good.
Very
And
interesting.
we had a high profile incident where I won't get into detail, but it made newspapers where an individual, and I debriefed her when she got back to the States. And I said, she was going, I don't know why they stopped me. Why they held me for hours. And I said, did you have I knew some of her associates, and I know exactly why they stopped you. They wanted your laptop. And while they were in there chatting you up and giving you the third degree, they're downloading everything in your laptop because they consider those people in your laptop subversives. And they want to know everything about them. And that's why you were stopped. That's why you're singled out. And they don't care if you're an American or not. They don't care. You go overseas and they say, Mr. Dolan, oh, thank you. We're glad you're here. You know what? It's your lucky day. We're giving you the presidential suite. We're giving you a presidential suite. And you know what? We're giving you half off. You're going to love it. And two, you know what? Don't bother to get a taxi. You're such an important guy. We love you. We just see all your YouTube stuff. And when you go out to dinner, we'll just take our car. We'll have our driver take you to where we want to go.
That just happened to me last week. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
It happens. One of the things I did, I brought an agency in to educate people when they travel. And I said, it's not like the United States. Well, it may be now, but it's not like the United States.
Good to know. That's good to know.
You're monitored particularly if someone like yourself, I guarantee you overseas, you've got half a dozen people looking at you. You do.
That was good to know.
Yeah, you do. You're not alone when you're sitting at that table. Everyone's listening to what you're saying.
Let's end this here because we've done another almost 2 hours. We have always have a lot to say. I think both of your sightings were fascinating, and I think the other bits of information you put in there were actually quite fascinating also. So I think there's a lot there for people to digest.
Yeah, I hope too it will encourage people that you don't have to live with this. And it's not like I was stressed or like, oh my God, I can't tell anyone. It's just like I just chose not to. I just didn't. So I thought, of what value does this bring to my life to talk about this and share this with people? And now I see people, as there's more communication, I see people that do suffer, that it destroys their life.
They do. A lot of them do.
They go why me? Why did it happen to me? And I can't work now. And it just destroys them.
Well, it's good that it did not affect you in a negative way in your life.
I want to share with people that it doesn't have to.
Right.
I mean, things happen to people. I in my career, I've seen terrible things happen to people. From a criminal standpoint, crimes and stuff and medical emergencies. And so we're stay their life and they'll never forget it. And it will change them. Something like that. People say, well, you get over time, heals all wounds. No, it doesn't. You'll get a scar and you'll always remember that scar. You remember where you got it. You remember the night you got it. Yeah. And like I said, I see these people, they suffer and they go like, well, why me? And is it my religion? Is it, what did I do and how I single out? And they go off on these tangents. I go like, oh my God, if they just understood that, yeah, this does exist. This does happen. You don't, you're still the same person today. You have a new thing added to your life, but keep it inside and let it destroy your life. Don't let it define you. It doesn't define you.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to tell both of your experiences, and I'm glad that others who've had these experiences can hear that, and even those of us who haven't. So I think it's quite fascinating. Well, look, let's end this here. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more about other things, but not at this time.
Okay.
So I want to thank everyone for being here with us. Thanks for listening. If you like what you saw, do hit the like button, get your notifications. You know what to do. Do subscribe to the channel if you like what goes on here, and do check out what I do over at richarddolanmembers.com. Whatever I do here, I do much more over at that site, and a lot of work over there. And I definitely want to thank you, Allan, my guest, Allan LaVigne. Absolute pleasure to talk with you, and we're going to be back for some more. But for now, that's all we got. I want to thank everyone once again. Let's keep fighting the good fight. Later.